We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, abortion has been top of the election cycles, especially for the midterms, which many people say was a referendum on abortion in America. Now, with Donald Trump as the almost certain contender for the Republican nomination this year, 2024, he's announced his ideas for dealing with abortion. Now, somebody who's really followed this very, very closely, and they've done a lot of writing this on the page of libertynation.com, is Liberty Nation's editor-at-large, Jim Fight, who's been following this ever so closely and who joins us here today. Thanks for being here, Jim.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
So, Jim, Donald Trump on, I believe it was Monday morning, he announced that he was having a press conference and that he was going to give out his position for if he wins the presidency in November, what his position is going to be on abortion. And what was that position?
That position was, it's a state issue. He's not supporting as it turns out, he's not supporting a state ban after all. I mean, I'm sorry, a federal ban after all. And I word it that way because, a week or two ago, he was talking about, I guess it was last week, he was talking about how he'd tease this announcement. He said, soon, he didn't give a date, but he said, soon I'm going to announce my position on abortion, on a national abortion ban. And he kicked around the idea of 15 weeks, and he said that seems to be where everybody's settling. And he said that seemed reasonable, but he didn't come out and specifically support it. He just kept saying, "Soon I'm going to reveal. Soon I'm going to reveal." And then first thing Monday morning, later today, I'm going to reveal. And then almost immediately come out and said what he said. But
it's funny if this politics things doesn't work out for him, he could always get a job as a host of like a popular reality TV style thing, maybe even something to do with business.
What a novel concept.
Get me Mr. Trump on the phone. I've got an idea for him. Yeah, so he really teased this out. But the funny thing is here, so his position is directly in line with what the Supreme Court ruled in the Dobbs versus Women's Health decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade, right?
Yeah, pretty much. The explicit language in that ruling, I don't have it right in front of me, but they use words like the people's elected representatives. So you could make the argument that, okay, well, if the U.S. Congress passed a law, that'd be one thing. But the general idea here was to get the U.S. government out of it and return this to the states.
So it's funny that you put it that way. It's to get the U.S. government out of it and put it back to the states. Now, one of the big slogans that you always see on signs at, I guess, pro-choice protests or rallies is keep government out of my body. There should be there should be nothing to do. We don't need these old men in Washington having any say on my body because it's my choice. But here's the thing, right? It seems to me that particular side of the argument would welcome a federal ruling through Congress. Obviously, you can't do it with executive order, but to get Congress to pass laws on this. And so it's not really keep these people out. It's keep out the people that don't agree with what I say, which is it's an odd way of thinking about it.
It's make sure the right old white men in Washington get to make the decisions, not the wrong ones.
Absolutely. So here's the thing. You actually wrote about this in advance anyway, and you pretty much nailed it well before Donald Trump actually made his announcement, because you did an analysis of what you thought he might do, and you pretty much came to the conclusion that he'll push it back to the states because that's where it is, because it would be too difficult to do anything else, right? It'd practically be impossible.
Well, yeah, constitutionally, there's, like I said, you could make the argument that if the U.S. Congress passed a ban, or on the other side of the argument, if they passed a protection, and I make that point in that article you're talking about, that this doesn't just apply to a ban on abortion. This applies to a protection on abortion as well. That maybe that would be okay, but the problem there is, I said you got three routes to a federal abortion ban or protection. That's a reinterpretation by the Supreme Court, which isn't likely to happen anytime soon. It took 50 years to overturn Roe v. Wade. And
sure, but Joe Biden's planning on adding another 4 justices from what I
well, that might help if he could pull that off. But
Sorry, please continue.
no, it's fine. Route number two is Congress passes a law.
Mm.
Well, that's unlikely to happen because in the Senate you're going to have um, you're going to
Supermajority
have
of 60,
60 out of
right?
100. Yeah,
Mm.
and that's well, hey, we're 200 and some odd years in and don't have one, so there you go. Uh, and then the other option, of course, is a constitutional amendment, which is even
Mm.
harder to get passed than a law through Congress. Uh, so
Just to
yeah,
clarify, what does a constitutional amendment take? That
well,
is
there are two ways to get a constitutional amendment. One is through what we call a con. Here lately, we've been calling them con-cons, which is constitutional convention.
sure.
But anyways, and that's where enough of the states have to vote at the state level that we need to have a convention, uh, and so that kind of bypasses Congress. The other way is, of course, that Congress pass an amendment, which requires even
Ratification.
more of Congress to to be on with it. And then, of course, after Congress does say, "Hey, you know what? Yeah, this is good. Let's have this as an amendment," then the states have to ratify. Enough states have to ratify, and so that's rare. We have 26 amendments out of, I mean, thousands of attempts. I forget the exact numbers, like 20,000 attempts or something like that. It's a lot. Uh, but it doesn't happen often, which
Sure.
is, thank God.
Yeah,
But
I'm still holding out hope for the 2 mules and an acre of
right,
land. So, Jim,
at current levels of federal spending, that would almost just be just a whatever kind of thing.
absolutely. Yeah. Where
That
are my
wouldn't even be a drop
mules?
in the bucket of current federal spending.
So, I think that Donald Trump is, for all these reasons you've just enumerated, it is right that this has got to stay with the states, right? The Supreme Court says it's got to stay with the states. His position that it stays with the states. Now, I guess that brings us on to what will the government do? Now, Joe Biden is already obviously working on whatever he can with this particular the abortion issue. But are there things that he can do via executive order in terms of, for example, punitive actions against hospitals or colleges, for example, if they receive federal funding, if they don't, for example, in a place where maybe abortion is, let's say, outlawed, but they don't allow people to leave the state to go and get an abortion elsewhere, but they receive government funding. Is that the kind of thing that we can expect, or almost like nipping at the edges
Well,
of
I see where you're going with this,
what the
Mark,
law is?
and it wasn't that long ago in the course of history. And a lot of us, I'm not an old man by any means, but it was within my lifetime that there was a time when the legal age to buy alcohol was uh was 21 in some states, and it was 19 in others, and it was 18 in others. And the way that they managed to basically push that through to have a unified 21 years of age as the minimum age to buy alcohol in the U.S. was it was unconstitutional for a federal law to regulate that because, well, the U.S. government was never intended to regulate individual behavior.
Sure.
That's to the state governments. But what is 100% entirely within the federal government's power is to withhold federal money. And that's what they did. They said, hey, you will either pass state laws that raise the drinking age to this, or you can say bye bye to highway money. And and that worked. And then here very recently, just in the last few years, it worked for raising the age to buy tobacco products to 21.
Hmm. So it's we can, I guess we can expect this to see this coming down the line, especially if should Joe Biden win a second term.
Yeah, I
It's
certainly wouldn't be surprised.
that's something that we can expect to see coming down the pipeline. That is certainly more fodder for articles for Jim Fight, editor at large at libertynation.com, that he'll be covering this beat in particular. He does some great writing on it. I do recommend you go and check that out. Jim, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thanks, Mark.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.